Welcome back to the People Being Real show. I'm your host, Mark Shapiro, and I'm sitting with the one and only Alex Echols. Welcome to the show, brother.
I'm excited to be here.
Yeah,
it's been a long time.
It has. We go back, I think, like 3-4 years already.
Man, I think even longer than that, actually.
Maybe.
Like
Perhaps.
5, 6, actually.
Has it been that long?
Yeah, I think it's been some time.
Well, we go way back. So I'm stoked to have you here. I mean, I've always been inspired by who you be and some of the amazing projects you've worked on. You're the author of the 2-Week Notice, which has helped so many people make authentic changes in their career and helping in that regard. You're also a master creator, very, very creative. I know you got a lot of creative projects brewing right now. Yes. You're an investor and you also do consulting. So,
yeah, exactly.
I'm stoked to have you on the show.
Same.
And you've been on quite the journey as well. And I think have such beautiful perspective. I'll let you talk more about what you've experienced, but I just want to learn from you. So I want to pick your brain, give you the space to share, and to have an awesome conversation for everyone who's tuning in at home or wherever you may be.
Well, I'm honored.
Yeah.
I'm super honored.
The way I like to open up these shows is to invite our distinguished guests to open up and to share an authentic story and just to, give us the highs, the lows, the everything that in between of the stories. So I'll pass the baton to you. What story would you like to share today?
So the story, the tell, the journey, the everything, it rocked my world. A few years ago, I was living in Miami. So it was actually 2017 now. I was living in Miami with my beautiful lady, and we had plans to move to LA because we wanted to finally start looking at setting up house. We were traveling the world. That's how we met originally, actually. Okay. We were traveling everywhere. I think in the first 6 months, we had traveled to 30 countries together or something. So we were very adventurous together, right? And we knew that we wanted to start putting down some roots. So we wanted to move to LA. And she went home to Estonia to visit her family for some time. And I was going home to Chicago to visit my family for some time. And I remember there was a day where I went to my father's church, but I was helping an older woman in her wheelchair, trying to be the nice gentleman, good son for my father, all that. And I was pulling out in a wheelchair, and I was pulling her out of the church doors. And I had to get through this really small door. And as I was pulling up, my clavicle and my sternum on this side completely separated. And I didn't know what it was at that point because for me, I was like, well, I need to help her make sure she got to her car. But there was something bigger there for me because I realized that I lost a lot of feeling. I lost a lot of strength very quickly because all I heard and all I felt was a massive pop. Okay. So for me, within a few days or so, I went and got an x-rays, got it checked out, and they were like, okay, so we can't do surgery there because it's so close to so many different things. But you're fine. You're totally fine. And there was a nudge. There was something within me that said, something's not right. Keep going down this path. So for me, I decided to go see doctors, went and had blood tests. And one blood test turned into 12 blood tests, 12 blood tests turned into biopsies. And lo and behold, a few months before that, and I think about this sometimes, I had this thought to myself that when I was in Miami, life was it was almost too easy for me. And what I mean by that is I had no purpose. I wasn't excited about a lot of stuff because at that time in Miami, I was partying, I was drinking, I was doing all the different things, and I was having fun with that I kind of had lost my true essence of being a creator and enjoying my life from the creation part, what we were just talking about, versus just having fun and just focusing on the next high, the next thrill. And I remember having this thought that, and, I've never shared this before with a bigger audience, but I had this thought that, man, I don't know how I'm going to live for several more decades like this because I was I was good, And within 3 months, back in Chicago, fast forwarding, I was diagnosed with a late stage form of cancer. Wow. And I remember right before the doctor called me into the office, he was going through all these different bill alerts on how to deal with cancer, all these different things, and he hadn't called me in yet. So I'm sitting at this very fine line between, am I about to die or am I about to walk out of this place knowing that I'm totally fine and I can get back to living my life? Because that would have been a good enough wake up call already.
Yeah.
But I was asymptomatic. I wasn't really exhibiting any of the stuff that a late stage cancer patient was feeling or exhibiting, right? And experiencing, and didn't matter. So I was diagnosed, and for me, after about 5 months, I went through my first set of chemotherapy treatments, and there was, I will admit, some negligence there, mostly around the diet and everything. Because I asked them, like, hey, can I eat? Like, what should I eat? They were like, you can eat whatever you want as long as it's not raw. So am I trying to get through those 5 months? I was eating sugars, I was eating cake, I was eating like everything that I wanted to eat. And my loved ones were totally fine. They were saying like, yeah, go ahead.
They just want you to be happy.
Exactly. They want you to be happy because no one knew what could have happened during that time, right? So my cancer during that time actually became more aggressive. So it went from, we're seeing a bit of like not necessarily recovery, but we're seeing a bit of response from it. And it went to within 3 weeks of me having my very first, my very final chemotherapy treatment, it had come back. It was more aggressive than what it was. So that means that I had to go to phase 2. Mm-hmm. And when you have cancer, there's not many phases before, unfortunately, dying. And so in this part of my life, I was scared, I was frustrated, I was afraid. There's so many different things that were coming up for me. But I think one of the most beautiful gifts that came up for me is this is a time where I really need to be more gentle with myself. I need to be in a space where I start doing my research. I need to start doing what's necessary for me, not necessarily just listening to the people in the white coats simply because they're like that, and because they are distinguished in who they are. And so I realized that one thing of all was the diet. All that sugar actually proliferates cancer. Sugar proliferates a lot of the different chronic illnesses that we can have in our bodies. And when I discovered this, I was like, oh no, I got to change my entire life. So from the stuff that I was putting on my body to the stuff that I was putting under my armpits to the stuff that I was putting in my body, my mindset, everything. Overnight, just completely switched it all. And so since then, I've been on this most beautiful path of not running away from the shadows, not running away from the things that I was bearing down so far into the depths of my soul, which may or may not really have led to the cancer, or been like a component of leading to the cancer. But really this journey of returning to my true essence as well, and becoming an artist again, and enjoying the creative process a lot more than I've ever done. For me, it was a very beautiful blend of not only the traditional medicine that healed me, but all the work that I started to do for mind, body, and spirit as well. Me not being afraid to do the work because my life was on the line. Late stage cancer, it's like, it's either you're going to do what you need to do, and you're going to pray, and you're going to hope, and you're going to do everything that you can do in your power to keep living, or you can just wither away. And this return to the true essence of myself has not only been from the artist's sake, it's been from the I am enough sake too. Because when we see, we understand, we feel, we sit with it, and we simply be with this mantra of I am enough, we start to see that the shadows, the light stuff, the fairies, like everything in life, right? Everything's here for us to continue to grow, for us to continue to be better humans. But it's also, I think, ultimately for us to enjoy our entire journey, our entire path. And even though cancer was a super messed up journey for me, it was also probably one of the most blessed, most therapeutic, one of the most just beautiful journeys of my life, because I've been able to come out on the other side giving so much more gratitude for my life.
Alex, thank you so much for being so open and sharing your incredibly real, challenging, and inspiring story with us. Like you said, you could have easily withered away or given up, and your body, it was literally weak. So I'm sure that you were getting that message sometimes from yourself, like, cooled out versus continue to have faith and to have the courage to be gentle on yourself, to look at some of those dark spots that I know we all have that we tend to avoid just because there's ways that we can avoid all over the place, and we can make up any excuses not to look at some of those things that are lingering with us. So there's so much juice, so much wisdom that you said. I want to dive into so much of it. One of the things that you were talking about is your creativity.
Yeah.
That you were in this businessman mode, and you let some of your creativity funnel up inside of you. And I know we oftentimes look at creativity like it's a luxury, when creativity is like a lifeline. Creativity is vital. So I think that was like a beautiful lesson. I'm excited to see what you continue to birth with that. But I'm curious to know, with some of the darkness that you faced within yourself, like when you were having those thoughts of like, I don't know if it's worth it, I don't know if I'm going to make it, or whatever other stories were coming up in your head, I'm curious to know how you interacted with those stories and were able to ride the wave and to prioritize faith, positivity, creativity, hope over some of the darkness.
For sure. Well, I think one of the very first things I have to admit is that without my spiritual guides and advisors in my life, I don't know if I would have, because Guillaume is his name. He helped me work through this basically the necessity for me not to run away from the shadows, because I think that for me, I'm from the South Side of Chicago. I never wanted to go back to my shadows. I never wanted to see my shadows again in my life, because I survived the South Side of Chicago. You know, and it's a dream and a hope for people, well, mostly young black men, to survive past age 15, 16, where I grew up. Okay? So I never wanted to see those shadows again. I wanted to keep pressing them down as much as I possibly could, and on the outside really look and appear as if I had everything together. So when working with Guillaume, you know, one of the biggest things about it was like, yes, you can go down this path of thinking that you can just heal yourself. But until you start to really look at healing those deeply rooted issues that you have within, which are generally the shadows, the things that are under the shade that you never want to actually see light, then you'll never be able to truly heal. You may get past the 5 months, and you may come out on the other side of being done with chemo, and they may say, yeah, you're healed, but how are you truly? Are you truly? Did you not only get to the physiological healing, but did you get to the deeply rooted healing as well? The thing that may cause the cancer to come back. The thing that may cause, me in the past to think that I'm not enough. That's the stuff that really needs the healing, And so for me, I really started to just work in the shadows, go into the shadows. And for me, one of the biggest parts of it is I started to notice how big rejection was in my life. It's not just from the female perspective when I was younger, because I was an overweight kid. I lost like 137 pounds in my life. Most people don't know that, right? But when I was younger, rejection started with that. Girls didn't like me. They thought I was funny because I learned how to, find the outer really sort of appearance and things to make people laugh and everything. But that was where rejection first started to really hit on me. And, through my ceremonies, through my, past life regression, all these different things that I wanted to do and I tried to do to heal myself, I never went super deep to heal that. And I learned and I experienced throughout the years since then that part of the rejection has threaded through my entire life. My entire life. Like me being at even, some of the events that we've been at in the past. Yeah. And I think that even though on the outwardly people like me, I think that they're talking about me behind my back. And so I started creating this stuff in my head, and that just leads to me pushing down a lot more stuff, which then returns to the whole freaking thing that I think is the most important thing for us to always remember is I'm good enough as I am. But that rejection was a complete threat. And that was probably one of the biggest things that I had to step into. And not just step into, be perfectly fine finding some good laying area in that shade and just all right, I'm willing to go through this right now. And so that's probably one of that's why I call it not only a hell of a journey, truthfully,
Yeah.
but also very therapeutic and beautiful because I was willing to actually do that work.
That's incredible. So coming out on the flip side, you're healthy. How has this new relationship with rejection, how is that translated?
I'd like to say that I thought that I did so much work in this short amount of time that I'm not afraid of rejection anymore, but it still comes up. Yeah. But it doesn't come up nearly as much as it once did.
Okay.
Because now, one of the most beautiful things about doing the spiritual practice, right, is understanding that we are not our thoughts. Discovering first that we are not our thoughts. Yeah. And if we can say and work towards this paradigm of understanding that when we have thoughts and being able to step out of ourselves and saying, well, I'm physically not having a thought, but my body, my mind is having a thought. And we provide this separation already.
Yeah.
And then we can provide even more separation by saying, I'm having a thought right now that I'm currently having a thought. And it's a thought that's not necessarily helping me continue to progress the way that serves me the best in my life.
Yep.
Right? So me creating more of this separation between the rejection, but being aware of the rejection as it comes up, I now say I'm feeling thoughts of rejection. Mm-hmm. So I'm able to process them. I'm able to name it, which now that I've become aware of it, I'm able to clear it. And I'm able to clear it in a very, a much better way than pushing it down. Yes. I don't push stuff down in me anymore. Yeah. You call me, I'm a freaking faucet, man.
Nice, babe.
If something's coming through my head or my heart, I want it to fully go through me. Yeah. Because I don't want to have cancer again. I don't want to go through that journey ever again.
Yeah.
I was looking at photos a few days ago on my lady's phone, and there are photos that I did not want to see on my phone. But I was like, this was me a year ago? Like the chubbier face because all the medicine and the poison and the chemicals in my body. I wanted to not lose weight because you lose weight, then you can wither away, like all these different things, right? But you got to step into the shadow, or at least I learned I have to step into the shadow. And I have to be willing to face head on the things that I was so willing to run away from in the past. So now if it's rejection that I feel, it's rejection that I see, and it's rejection that I choose to work through. And I would love to say like, I've worked through it already. But I've learned that's part of life. Yeah. It's the freaking journey. Go through it. Enjoy it. Yeah. It's going to be messed up sometimes, but what are you going to do to find the tools, the resources for you to be able to get through it?
Thank you for being so real and taking us there. And it's funny you talked about rejection because I shared probably like 4 or 5 weeks ago on a podcast about risk taking that I found that the fear of rejection, mostly professionally, has kept me in my comfort zone from, reaching out to people, asking for support, or, going after guests for the podcast, business deals, etc. And it's this made up fear that, this person might not be interested. I might be a burden on them. And then it just it impacts my actions, so even just the thought of rejection can just keep me in my darkness versus in the light. So breathing through it. And I found myself yesterday, 4th of July, I've had a tough week, a tough emotional week, which I'll share more about, I think, in a future episode when I feel ready. But I found myself in my head, really sad. And I walked away from the group because I think finding myself sad and a social dynamic, there was not didn't feel good. If I'm sad on my own, it's okay, but in a social situation, being sad, being the only person that's sad, not wanting to feel
aware of it,
right.
Almost.
So I walked away, and I had a moment. I cried, and I realized that by being lost in my head, playing this story out that I was playing in my head about some stuff that I'm going through right now, I wasn't present, and I'm in that moment, I'm okay, I can see this now, that I'm not being present, that I'm playing a story In this particular instance, it's like one that like is dark over in repeat in my head, and it's getting in the way of me having like enjoying this epic view of LA, watching the fireworks across the whole city of LA. I mean, it was absolutely, a spectacular view. So I would like, let myself honor it by crying through it, but then also breathing and being like, okay, let's like ground myself in the present moment and all the beauty and the amazing people that are here. And that was like very cathartic for me to honor the darkness. Not to avoid it, but then also to like ground myself in the present, to get out of my head, to create some space to be.
To actually, and to be, but also to move forward.
Yeah.
To move through that shadow.
Yeah.
Because now you're more equipped when it comes up again, if it comes up again.
Oh, it will. It will.
But I honor that because, this is about people being real, right?
Yeah.
I think that, especially for men, this whole notion around not expressing, pushing stuff down, not crying is very toxic. So I honor the fact that you cried yesterday. My 2 years of going through my journey, my year and a half, really, I've never cried so much in my life.
Wow.
I never, like every single day, I at least had one tear come down. And then other times, there'd be like a million. And my lady, she would say like, you have the ugliest cry. like making like jokes.
Yeah, right.
Funny,
yeah.
But it was just like, and you like the full expression of just crying and going through that. But once again, that's something I think as men and women, of course.
Yeah.
But specifically men, because it's such a toxic thing around not fully expressing ourselves that we have to do.
Yeah.
Feel like cry.
I didn't cry for about 20 years. And then when I started crying again, I realized how much I loved crying. And it's funny because sometimes I'll be crying and someone will be like, "Are you okay? What are you sad about?" I'm like, I'm not actually sad.
Yeah, right.
I don't know if sad is the right word, but
Yeah.
I feel so deeply connected to myself emotionally. And like oftentimes, the fastest thing to make me cry is when I connect to my dad who passed away a couple of years ago. And like, it's just like when I feel his existence here, because it's fleeting when I even am able to feel it because he's not here in the physical form, like I get really emotional. Yeah. So when I find that when I cry a lot, it feels liberating, but I feel connected to myself because when I'm not crying, I think that's a great sign that maybe I'm not as in touch with my emotions. I'm maybe trying to control it more. So I look at crying as a symbol that I am in a liberated, flowing place.
Exactly. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah. I'm just so fascinated. I want to ask you this question, just so like the word authenticity, like what your definition is now, or maybe it was before. I'm curious to hear your take given this unique experience that you've had.
So given the unique experience that I've gone through, for me, authenticity really would have to come down to being able to dance and walk to the beat of your drum and do what you need to do, no matter how you feel you may be rejected, be accepted, be loved, be judged, like all of that, because there's so many things that I'm doing in my life right now that because of the whole rejection piece, I would have been afraid to do in the past. I remember having this, I lived in Barcelona back in 2009 for a while, and I remember writing this Facebook status, F it, I'm about to drop out of college and I'm not going to finish college, I'm just going to become a DJ. And I just recently started DJing.
Nice.
Like 2 months ago.
Any mixes on SoundCloud that we can listen to?
Not yet, but they're coming up.
Cool. All right, looking forward to it.
I got the very first one. It's coming up. But that whole judgment piece is coming up because there's one part of the mix, and I've recorded like 5 of them now, because I'm part of a cohort now. That's where I'm being taught by like somebody who's further along, all that. And there's this one part of the mix where I'm like, it's not good enough. The different things coming up. Yeah. It's not good enough. But I'm intentionally calling it the beginner series, so I can show people. That's authenticity to me. Mm-hmm. So I can show people who, let's say next week, 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, if people come across my stuff on SoundCloud, they see that I was willing to put myself out there even when I was not perfect. And that's what it's all about for me now. Mm-hmm. I don't need to be perfect to enjoy my life. I don't need to be perfect to be successful. I don't need to be perfect to be happy. And that's probably what authenticity is for me is like bringing every single day, having the light and the shadow merging together, me embracing both of them, me living in both of them, me enjoying both of them, no longer seeking perfection, no longer seeking acceptance of every single person in my life simply because I want to be loved. I don't want to be rejected. For me, that's what the true authenticity is about. Being okay with who I am.
So beautifully shared. Thank you for your wisdom. What places shifted your perspective the most?
Living wise?
Or just places you've seen, traveled, that either showed you something that you didn't know was possible or something. I mean, maybe it's a place where it just gave you perspective of gratitude.
I think the place,
inspiration.
Yeah, it's the place that gave me the biggest perspectives of like the gratitude shift. And there are a few, but they would be places like Cambodia, Vietnam, Dominican Republic. You know, the places where we can't even necessarily say that they are truly developing countries in certain parts. Because in some of these times, I would go build houses. I would go for like, to build infrastructure. And I would go to some of the poorest parts of Vietnam, Cambodia, Dominican Republic. And I would just see how, one, these people were so happy, right? They were happy with nothing. But on the flip side, you would see that where the same place that they would get their drinking water, it would be nothing but trash and feces and like mosquitoes and all these different things flying around. Like we think about the Zika virus and we think about malaria is like one of the biggest killers in the entire world because in these more impoverished areas, they don't have the infrastructure. They don't have the resources that are necessary for them, so previous to me doing a few of my travels when I was younger, one of the things that they said that there is the reintegration back into society. So it's reverse cultural shock is what it's called. And I remember before I came back, I was reading about it and they were like, when you get back, you'll notice that you may not take as long showers as what you did before. I was like, I'm still going to take my showers. But ever since I got back from some of these places, I've noticed that my showers are a lot more intentional than what they were. And that's just me giving gratitude, not only for my life, but giving gratitude for something as simple as a shower. Something as simple as me being able to go sit my butt down on an actual toilet versus having to go squat over just a hole in the ground where there's nothing but like flies and insects crawling around. All of these different things. Right, yeah. So that shift has turned into gratitude for me in my life. And I would say that given the climate of America right now, if every person would be required to travel to a place that is so outside of their comfort zone and they would have to sit with it, I don't think the racism would be as crazy as what it is right now. I don't think the ignorance, that we have in such proliferated amounts in the world right now would be as big if we would just be able to go sit and be outside of ourselves, because we would see that one, we're all human, but there's people in the world who have a fraction of what we have in life, but are so much more grateful, so much more happy, so much more peaceful. And I think that that's something that would bring a lot more genuine peace to a lot of us in our lives and our hearts.
Dude, such beautiful perspective. Yeah. And I certainly agree. I think that some of my experiences, like on a journey trip to Colombia, building homes for family in need, like lots of really great perspective that when I'm having a bad day, I can have that glimmer of gratitude, being like, wow, things could be way worse. I've got it pretty good. I got two more questions and then we'll start wrapping this up. Cool. One of the questions is one life. Yeah. I've noticed you've been using that, the hashtag, the wording more. So what does that mean to you?
So one life is something where I think back in like 2008, I had been I was in my bed actually. And I, at this point, I wanted to find something that I could, like a mantra that I could always work with in my life. And I was looking around my bedroom, and at this point I was doing a lot of Photoshop. I told you, not a lot of love from girls. Okay. I was doing a lot of stuff on the computer. Yeah. And I was learning Photoshop a lot back then. And I would make these Ferrari posters every single year. And I would start putting them all up on my wall, my own artwork. And while I was thinking about this, I was looking around my room and I noticed one poster I had come up with and I had the words "One Life, You Decide" on it, and I was like, okay, that's it. And it just led me to wanting to create not only just a mantra that I could live by in my life, but also something I would be able to start sharing with other people. So this is actually the One Life logo.
Oh, dope.
That I got back in
Cool.
Barcelona back in 2009.
No way.
And since then, you know, I've sold them on t-shirts, I've sold them on hats. And in the background, when I sell like hats, for instance, right? I always have some sort of social responsibility tie into it. So last year I did a very limited release of One Life hats, and they were called The Warrior Within. That was like the name of the hat, right? And on the back end, I donated, I think, 44% of all the revenue. Oh no, all the profit. It's very different, right? Profit, revenue. But I donated 44% of all my profit to the Cancer Research Institute, because that's something that helped save my life. So I want to be able to give the opportunity to other people so it may save more lives, you know? But for me now, I think it's quite funny because I say one life, but I'm on my second life now. I had a stem cell transplant last year. Without that, I'd be dead. I would be dead. I'll be honest. So I'm on my second life, but it's made the sweetness, the juiciness of one life even more important to me, because I'm going to live every freaking day as much as I possibly can. So now I'm starting to see that, you know, even when my business emails, I sign out with hashtag one life now, because it's not only for me authentically to show up, but it's for me to, you know, even when I'm talking to these business people, there's like these little like tidbits of, are you seeing this? Maybe this will be a inspiration for you to slow down in your busyness as a businessman, for you to feel into what does one life truly mean? Because what my one life means to me is very different from what it means to you. My one life and your one life is very different compared to, you know, one of my uncles who's been super successful my entire life. But it's my way of serving. It's my way of giving back. Even if I'm not always there in the physical form, to say, how are you living your one life? So that's why it's so important to me these days.
I think that's such a fascinating question to, you know, one life. Like thinking of it like that, like what would you let go of? Being like, all right, time is precious, one life. And, you know, you talked about rejection. I think for me, that would be self-acceptance, rejection. That'd be like a common theme. If my life were ever to be interesting enough to be turned into a movie, that would be the lesson that I would really get to continue to learn and come to peace with, where less of the trying and more of just being in my light and being. So thank you for the invite here. What can we do to support you?
Oh man, that's not a question I was thinking I was gonna come either. Okay, one thing is, since I've just started to get into my DJing, I think I'm about 3 months in now. I'm gonna be starting to put more mixes on SoundCloud. Would love people to go listen there, love it, you know, share with other people. I'm actually starting a production class next week as well. So it's not only just the mixing of the music, it's the making of the music as well. It's continuing to create. So I would love for you guys and beautiful ladies as well to be able to share that when it comes out. When my nonfiction novel working title, A Son's Faith, when that comes out next year and maybe even later this year, I love the support around that. Yeah. And just in general, what I would love to do is, if this is a message that has helped someone, if this is a message that has served someone, whether it be right now when they listen to it or several years down the line, just send me a message just saying like, you know, this part of the interview, it really touched me, because that's good enough for me. That's more than enough for me. You know what I mean? So I appreciate you guys for just being here today and just listening to this beautiful exchange between brothers today.
Alex, it's been such a pleasure. I'm glad the conversation's happening right now, because it's been a long time in the making, but you're the man. Thank you for being an inspiration. What final words of inspiration, words of advice, empowerment do you have for people, everyone listening to people being real, to live a bold, authentic life that they can be proud of?
I would say, if you're not doing it just yet, every single morning, not only sitting with yourself and sitting in a space of stillness and just simply being, but after you get done with that, and gratitude is a very big thing too. Like, I give gratitude so many times throughout the day. So I think that's a very important piece as well. But looking into the mirror, every single day of your life, in the morning, when you go on your bathroom breaks throughout the day, and when you before you go to bed at night, and looking yourself in the eyes and simply saying, I'm enough, I'm more than enough, and I'll always be enough. Because that will lead to, that will catalyze feeling that I am enough inside to it showing and living and being it, actualizing it, so that you truly share and shine your light. Because that's the thing that's really going to change the world and continuing to push the world forward. At least I believe so.
Mic drop. The one and only Alex Echols.
Thanks, brother.
Dude, appreciate you, brother.
Same, man. That was great.
That was fun.
I loved it.